Welcome back to the program. I don't exactly know what I'm going to say today, but I know I'm going to talk about a lot of interesting things. Number one, to the folks out there that are MAGA, that are America First, that are just waiting to learn more and more and more about Epstein, I want to remind you that the whole Epstein thing right now could be a diversion. Now, why do I say that? Because, number one, I'm going to say this point blank and clear. Thank God President Trump won this election. Thank God. Because what we're going to discuss and talk about never would have come to fruition if he did not. It all would have been buried. And we would have been stuck in the most worst, horrific, just dystopian type of existence. Okay? And we would never, ever have a justice system. It would be a million, trillion tier justice system. And thank God President Trump won. Because you know what? At this point right now, I'm not going to make predictions. But I am going to say, we are the closest we have ever been to finally putting the deep state, that's right, the deep state criminal conspiracy people and what they did in 2016 in prison. And that's not hyperbole, okay? It's not hyperbole. So today, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, shocked us all. Shocked me mainly because she was a Democrat and is now a Republican. And I have to say, she's been a phenomenal Director of National Intelligence. She dropped the mother of all bombs on the intel community today. It is a criminal conspiracy, folks. A criminal conspiracy. And I want to talk more about what this criminal conspiracy is. I mean, we don't have to be, novices or anything like that. We know what this is all about. We know the bad actors. I spent 5 years plus, maybe 7 years plus, talking about the deep state, talking about all the bad criminals. How many times did we call this a bloodless coup? How many times did we talk about all these different things, from the Horowitz report to the Durham report to this report to that report, and all the frustration and all the just anger at the fact that we all knew and know exactly what these people did, and yet we can't and couldn't get justice. I'm here to tell you that that day may now finally come. I want you to listen closely to the details of what has been uncovered. It is indeed shocking. It's not shocking in the fact of the quote information. We know what they've done, but it's shocking that it has finally come to light.
2016 victory in presidency, Washington, D.C. Today's date, Friday. This is from the Director of National Intelligence. Tulsi Gabbard revealed overwhelming evidence that demonstrates how, after President Trump won the 2016 election against Hillary Clinton, President Obama and his national security cabinet members manufactured and politicized intelligence to lay the groundwork for what was essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. This is from the Director of National Intelligence, that language. And also she puts in the tweet top, their goal was to usurp President Trump and subvert the will of the American people. No matter how powerful, every person involved in this conspiracy must be investigated and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The integrity of our democratic republic depends on it. We are turning over all documents to the Department of Justice for criminal referral. Jack Posobiec, this is what, to Caroline Wren's point, Durham did not have this information, correct? And Tulsi Gabbard, have you ever heard language like this from a direct...
Did you hear what he said there? He said Durham never had this information. Now, why is that? If he was supposed to be doing a special counsel investigation into all of this, why wouldn't he have that information? You're going to find out.
Director of National Intelligence or any senior intelligence official, sir?
Steve, I've never heard in language like this because I've never seen anything like this before in all these years using intelligence channels and intelligence programs to actually act and to actively go after a U.S. Politician who's going to be the next president of the United States. So the person that is now your successor, you're directing it, and it says over and over in these documents, and you could see it where because what, and it's so smart what DNI Gabbard has done here because she's released all of it. So she says it, she's got the press release, she has the executive summary, but she provides you all the backing documents as much as possible. And it says very clearly, per the direction of the President of the United States. So per the direction of Barack Obama, following this meeting, you are now to create this new assessment.
If I could sit back, quiet in my own house somewhere and wear like a little earpiece and kind of tell everybody else what to do, yeah, I'd love to do something like that.
And Steve, by the way, we've got emails in here. I'm just going through it, but you can see responses from the analysts. This is the technology cyber intel unit, these cyber intelligence officials at the FBI coming up and responding to Clapper's team and saying, wait a minute, listen to this. We would prefer the first sentence regarding Russia's intent to be softened. The way it currently reads, it would indicate we have definite information that Russia does intend to disrupt our elections, and we are uncomfortable making that assessment. That's from...
So listen to that for a second. Let me break this down. The intel community, the FBI in this case, and the CIA, the lower level, the grunts on the ground, the people, the operatives, the people that are actually doing good work, not the seventh floor, right? Not management. They basically said, we don't agree with this assessment. We don't see proof of Russian collusion in the election. And so not only do we want you to change the language, but more importantly, we don't agree with your assessment here at all. And the seventh floor said, we don't care. Do it anyway. Listen.
The FBI in 2016, but that's below the level. That's the actual intelligence analysts, way below the Comey level, way below Clapper and Brennan over at DNI, previous DNI and previous CIA, where the people who are actually doing the work says, wait, we don't have the evidence. We don't have the evidence to back this up, and you are directing us to make this requirement. We don't feel comfortable doing it, and they did it anyway. And we know later that Brennan went and hand-selected the people that would put together this completely fake assessment, and he led the entire... He could have started World War III with this.
You know what? That's true. He could have started World War III. Because for the last 10 plus years, Vladimir Putin and Russia have all they've heard is how evil they are, how they interfered in our election, how he's a dictator, how Russia needs to be bombed, and and Ukraine needs to bomb Russia, and Russia are the bad guys. I've been saying this for years, that Ukraine were the perpetrators, Ukraine were the bad guys, Ukraine were the problem, not Russia. And so Russia has to sit there and take it. And I said this years ago. You'll probably all remember. I said what? It's amazing that Russia hasn't attacked us yet. With the amount of provocative talk, with the amount of threats and horrible things that they've said about Vladimir Putin and the entire country of Russia, I'm surprised the Russian people don't hate Americans for that matter. And he's right. This could have led to World War III. Again, thank God President Trump is in office, or none of this ever would have came to light, ever. They would have gotten away with everything. And right now, it doesn't look like they are. Again, we don't know, but it doesn't look like they're going to get away with it. Finally, after all these years.
Sobek, you're from the community. But are you going to break this down for people so they can understand it better? What do you anticipate next? They're going to be criminal referrals. Where do we go from here? This is just the opening salvo on a Friday afternoon in July.
I mean, Steve, look, we can zoom out a little bit here. I'm in this. I'm seeing these emails though. Pushing back the president's daily brief. I've never seen anything like this in certainly not in the Obama admin, saying that they actually
giving the president-elect Donald Trump fake intelligence. Fake intelligence.
They withheld the president's daily brief so that they could set this up with this assessment in it as the one that's put. Because the PDB, it doesn't just go to the president. That's what everyone has to understand. It goes to senior members of the government. It goes to senior members of the military. It goes throughout the IC. There are various versions of it that can be read. The president's version, of course, is the most highly classified. And then if you go dig deeper into it, you can get into other levels of compartmentalization, because the president's the one, he's supposed to be able to see everything that's in there. They withheld the PDB so that they could set this up this way. And by the way, email after email in here says this is POTUS tasking.
I'm going to give you a scoop. This is what we got the president, because the President Daly's brief is given to the president-elect. None of this, when CNN reported they were going to shift to 73, we said, hang on. Right. Where did it come from?
Because Trump was
we
giving
called
them.
the chief of staff. This is why the meeting that took place, I'll explain this more later. This is why the meeting that took place on the 3rd, to explain it, where they slipped in at the end the dossier in a brown paper envelope and gave it to BuzzFeed, Ben Smith and that team, I think, BuzzFeed, that afternoon. That's where that all came from. They didn't do the president's daily briefing because they knew we got the president-elect gets the same briefing that the president of the United States in transition. Okay? They withheld it. This is how duplicitous they are. This is how guilty they are. Ben Rhodes, Obama, all of them are going to rot in a frickin' prison. And this is why we got to get on top of this. This is the deep state. This is the coup against Trump. You can see it all right there. Jack, how are people going to get their arms around this? How do we prepare?
To withdraw the original ICA before President Trump could and his team could get a copy of it, so that they could only see the revised one.
It skipped for a minute. Let me rewind this one part, because this is important. So they gave him false intelligence, and they also gave Durham false intelligence. Remember what I said in the beginning? Gee, how come Durham didn't get to the bottom of all this? Because he didn't know. They actually kept him in the dark by giving him and feeding him false intelligence. This was an entire criminal conspiracy. This is treason. This is obstruction. This is election interference. This is prosecutorial misconduct. This is, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but it's like everything. It is literally everything. So I'm going to rewind it because I think this is that part.
That's why they held this from his team could get a copy of it. Right. So they made sure to go back in the time frame, the PDB would be given to the president-elect. And that, of course, at the time was President Trump. So they made sure to withdraw the original ICA before President Trump could and his team could get a copy of it, so that they could only see the revised one. That's why they held this from they were holding it back from Obama. They were making sure that Trump wouldn't have access to it. Look, you are going to see on this. I certainly expect to see hearings. I certainly expect to see people to be able to dig.
Let me explain something. This was a Democrat, former Democrat, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, saying, dead to rights, we have a criminal conspiracy here. We have gotten to the bottom. In other words, they have figured out, and now they have all the evidence based on a criminal conspiracy, which is why I said last night that they're working on a criminal conspiracy, and I named you the names because the people and the sources that I have knew some of that information. This is all now coming to fruition, mainly because Kash Patel went on Joe Rogan's show and said, hey, We just found an entire room filled with documents, and all of our agents are going through it right now. So the fact is, they are building a criminal conspiracy. And I would assume that a criminal conspiracy would start at the top, which would be Barack Obama. I would say right underneath that was his VP, right? Joe Biden. And then you have his director of national intelligence, James Clapper. You have his CIA director in John Jihad Brennan. You have his FBI director in James Comey. And then you have your deputy FBI director, who I believe was Andrew McCabe. Then you have Rod Rosenstein. And then you have Bruce Orr. You have Nellie Orr. You have Fusion GPS. Then you also can now go over to Hillary Clinton and Jake Sullivan and the State Department and Uma Abedin. I see Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. These are all of the people that have been involved in this web of conspiracy.
Down on this, but
I don't want to hear.
You're going to see prosecution.
I don't want to hear.
I want
a criminal grand jury. I want a criminal grand jury on guys perp walked. Forget hearing.
How do you not see prosecution?
Forget it. Prosecutions. This is you get
You've
a
got
criminal.
to,
this is why they need special
false
prosecution.
statements.
Somebody.
There's perjury here. There's
I
conspiracy
said
to commit
from
perjury.
the beginning.
There's obstruction.
You need judge. You need. This is treason. This is treason.
It is treason.
They tried to thwart an election. They tried to overturn a government. This is treason. This is why I need Judge Janine or Ed Martin or get one of these U.S. attorneys. Somebody needs to take this on full time. They don't have capacity. I know you got to bounce, Jack.
So that's it in a nutshell. This is a criminal conspiracy, and they have all the evidence of a criminal conspiracy. Now, when is this going to drop? I talked about it last night a little bit. It could be, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all, and drop at the very end of December. Or this could take a lot longer. This could take another year and a half, 2 years, 2027. I don't know. I would assume certainly by the end of his term, but it might be a lot sooner. And it might be a lot sooner because they have been working on this for months. He's been in office for 6 months. Cash probably got sworn in like at the 2 months point, right? Month and a half, whatever it was. And then you had Ratcliffe was almost immediately, so that was good. You had Ed Martin working on things almost immediately, so you had that. Bongino, all these different people, they've been working on this criminal conspiracy. Now, I am not going to sit here and say it's absolutely going to happen. They're all going to jail. They're all going to fry. I don't do that. We have seen a 2-tier, 3-tier, million-tier, trillion-tier justice system for way too long. I am hopeful. I am cautiously optimistic that we are finally going to see justice. Please, God, let it happen. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put it down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.